Cases settle across the board when they are factually ripe. For family law cases, however, a case needs to be not just factually ripe. It also must be emotionally ripe. Because I have seen people walk away from millions of dollars when they're emotionally ready, and I've seen people spend $30,000 litigating over candlesticks. Our job as counsel in the family law realm is to get the case factually ripe as soon as possible and to help our clients get themselves emotionally ripe.
Welcome to Divorce Dialogues. I'm Katherine Miller. This is where we have honest, thoughtful conversations about divorce, the emotional, financial, legal, and family questions no one prepares you for. From deciding whether to separate, to navigating the process with dignity, to rebuilding what comes next, Divorce Dialogues is here to help you find clarity, perspective, and a better way forward. Today's guest is Theresa Lyons, Terry Lyons from Lyons & Associate, a family firm that focuses on helping clients navigate divorce and other family transition with experienced legal guidance and a practical, solutions-oriented approach. In this conversation, we're talking about the legal realities of divorce, how the process actually works, the mistakes people often make when they first enter the system, and how thoughtful legal strategy can help people move through divorce with greater clarity and better long-term outcomes. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
What do you think are the biggest misunderstandings that people have about the legal process and the way that it actually works in divorce?
I think when people first come to the process of divorce, first of all, they're in crisis themselves. They're at risk of losing everything they ever made a public promise to protect. They're worried about their assets. They're worried about their children. And in the middle of that crisis, they come to a legal system that's unknown to them. And when they get to the legal system, many people think about what they see on TV, that it's going to be very adversarial, that there's going to be these dramatic, aha, I gotcha moments, and that a judge will have the time or inclination to hear all of the minutia of their life and their anguish. And the reality is, a good lawyer will make sure that there are no aha, gotcha moments. A good lawyer will make sure that you are not being dragged through court, going through your life with a fine-tooth comb. And many people think that when you come to the divorce process, it needs to be adversarial all the time. It does not. Make no mistake, there are moments where sometimes, I hate to say, you got to punch people in the mouth because they're doing bad things. The vast majority of the time, however, a good lawyer will serve you by being practical and tactical and amicable where you can be and make concessions that make sense. If you've been married to somebody for a long time and you've created a life together, just because you're getting divorced, you can't forget all of the things that you share in common, that you have a common interest, that both of you should be protecting, frankly, against the legal system itself.
So, Terry, what is the difference between a punch in the mouth and a gotcha moment?
I think a punch in the mouth is where you file very strong pleadings, where maybe you issue a subpoena to depose someone or something in a weak spot. A gotcha moment is where you trap someone in a lie. Now, the reality is that many people often lie, many clients, because they're sad, scared, embarrassed. And really the question is it a lie of great magnitude? If it's not a lie of great magnitude that directly impacts your children, your assets, your own emotional well-being, then move on. Don't get caught up in that trap. So as a litigator, so I'm a certified matrimonial attorney. I clerked for the New Jersey Supreme Court, the justice that writes the rules. I'm admitted to practice at the United States Supreme Court. There is a place on this planet for well-litigated cases. However, I also have a master's degree in social work. And over 90% of cases settle. And a good lawyer has a duty to try and help you reach that moment. And Katherine, that's one of the things I like about you, that it's not always a win-lose battle. You also come at it from a perspective that, is it really a win-lose? No. Let's look at what we have. Let's figure out how we can divide it. Let's protect our children and let's move through this crisis and move on with our lives. And that's one of the things that you and your practice should be proud of as well.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. Before we leave this idea of the gotcha moment, I think that people come into divorce, and tell me if you agree or disagree with this idea that they have a story, that they're right in their story, but the judge is going to care about punishing the other person for being wrong often. And I think, though, that as I'm listening to you talking about the sort of a gotcha idea, there's also a fear that you're going to be caught out in something you might not feel so good about, right? So someone worries about having an affair, or they're furious about the other person having an affair. But it turns out, well, maybe 10 years ago, you kissed someone at the office Christmas party, or, something like that. And that this idea that this sort of long history of the marriage where people had been on their best behavior and on their worst behavior throughout the trajectory of the marriage, that somehow or other that's going to make a difference in the divorce. And it certainly might make a difference in the decision to divorce, how you feel about the divorce. And I think this is a sort of disconnect between the emotional experience of the divorce, which is also often very relevant to the negotiation, and the legal process, where, at least in my experience, tell me if you disagree, that's not such a big issue.
I have two thoughts as I hear you go through this. One, I try to work with my clients about the distinction between the court of public opinion and the court of law. And in the court of public opinion, with yourself, with your family members, with your friends, some of those gotcha issues may have relevance. We have to acknowledge that they may have some relevance in the court of public opinion. In the court of law, however, it's not that a judge doesn't care. It's that judges don't have the time or inclination. For example, in New Jersey, there's 1.2 million married people. The divorce rate is 50%. That means at any given time, there's 600,000 humans getting divorced in the great state of New Jersey. If every time somebody lied about who walked the dog, who kissed someone at an office party, the courts would come crashing down because they wouldn't be able to process divorces. Now, that being said, there are some components of gotcha which could be important. So, for example, if I have cheated on my spouse, that matters in the court of public opinion, not necessarily in the court of law. However, it could matter in the court of law if the person that I'm having an affair with is a legitimate danger to our children, a pedophile, a drug dealer, and I'm bringing them around our children. Then the court will care. Or if I have dissipated marital assets to carry on the affair. I'm having an affair with someone, I take out a second mortgage on the house, and I buy my new girlfriend or boyfriend this really hot Harley. Great! The court's not going to care that I had an affair, but the court's going to say, hey, that second mortgage you took out on the home, that's not the responsibility of your spouse. So I try to counsel clients on the distinction between the court of public opinion and the court of law. The second thing that I believe is important for all litigants to keep in mind, cases settle across the board, whether it be criminal, slip and fall, any kind of lawsuit you can think of. Cases settle when they are factually ripe. So, for example, a medical malpractice case might settle once all the medical records are in. A slip and fall case might settle after the deposition testimony happens. A criminal case, there might be a plea bargain once the police records are in. Once a case is factually ripe, it settles. For family law cases, however, a case needs to be not just factually ripe. It also must be emotionally ripe. Because I have seen people walk away from millions of dollars when they're emotionally ready. And I've seen people spend $30,000 litigating over candlesticks. Our job as counsel in the family law realm is to get the case factually ripe as soon as possible and to help our clients get themselves emotionally ripe.
Well, in my book, The Emotionally Savvy Divorce, I talk a lot about the importance of emotions in the divorce negotiation. And I think that the emotional piece is more important in the negotiation from the perspective of the people, more important than the legal one, because the legal is sort of, that's where they're going to go if they can't resolve it here. But they come in, marriage is a very emotional thing, and they come in with this idea of wanting some kind of resolution to that. As a very experienced family lawyer, Terry, how do you see emotion showing up in the day-to-day negotiations in your divorce cases?
even before the negotiations, I think it's important that an attorney do some emotional work with his or her client. Do you represent a supported spouse who might feel disempowered by the mediation process to begin with? Do you represent a spouse who might have done wrong and emotionally is just going to go in and give everything? I believe the emotionality is important to discuss even before the negotiations. Help our clients ferret through the emotions that they bring to us, use those emotions to ascertain the overall strategic goal, because strategy has to drive operations, not the other way around. Use the emotions to determine the overall strategy. Within the strategy, come up with if-then scenarios. And then when you're in negotiations and you meet that inevitable fork, then you're at that moment with your client. You have credibility points in the bank as the attorney to say, hey, client, remember we discussed what emotions you were going to be going through? And remember you told me your ultimate goal was blank? Does this fork in the road and your decision that you have to make, does it comport with that or not comport with that? When it does, great. When it doesn't, let's talk.
And it's an evolving process, right? What someone is feeling, thinking, prioritizing at hello changes throughout the process. They sort of, I think, have a chance to think about, marinate in, reassess their situation, and they evolve. And so I think that's a great question, Terry, because you said this is where we are, what's changed, what's up with that? Do you agree?
I agree. I think it's also important to understand the biochemical nature of what's going on with our fellow humans when they're going through a divorce. They've actually done brain science studies on this, that for many humans, a divorce is actually more traumatic to the brain than the death of a spouse. And there's lots of reasons for that. The death of a spouse is finality. The death of the spouse, you don't necessarily have to look at yourself for shame and what coulda, shoulda, woulda. You're not dealing with ongoing issues. You're not looking at your own self with failure. And so to understand that not only do we have to be with our clients and sit with our clients and counsel them in the midst of their emotions, we have to understand that their brains are in a place that is likely having more difficulty processing these emotions biochemically than another person would. And I think that's the importance of counsel, that we can step back and kind of reflect, say, hey, what's going on here? Because clients are in a state of biochemical discontent in the midst of that trauma, there are also emotions when you talk about marinade. Somebody's going to feel some way the day they find out they're getting a divorce. They're going to feel different a month out, 3 months out, 6 months out, a year after the paperwork is signed, 5 years after the paperwork is signed. So another task that we as lawyers have to do is say, hey, I understand right now you're feeling X. Those feelings are very valid. And I have a duty to inform you that 3 years, 5 years down the line, you may feel differently. And so my job is simply to reflect that to you. At the end of the day, we as lawyers have to do what our clients direct. Unless our clients are directing us to commit a crime, really, unless our clients are directing us to commit a crime, we have to do what our clients direct. In the midst of that, we also have to remind them what they may face down the line emotionally.
Divorce Dialogues is brought to you by Miller Law Group. We believe divorce isn't just a legal process, it's a human transition. At Miller Law Group, we help people navigate divorce with dignity, clarity, and respect, focusing on conversations that lead to better outcomes for families. Learn more at miller-law.com. You know, I think that many couples get stuck in what I call conflict traps, which are the same argument that happens over and over again. So from your perspective, Terry, what do you think the most common conflict traps that you see in divorce cases?
I try to actually, rather than focusing on the conflict trap, I actually try to step back and figure what emotion is triggering that conflict trap. So, is it the emotion of fear? Is it the emotion of anger? Is it the emotion of still, I love you, I'm still attached? Is it the emotion of, I want to punch you in the face? Right? And so, because a lot of times the conflict traps are really manifestations of the underlying emotions. If I can sit back and say, this is a conflict trap, it's the same thing over and over. What's really going on is one client is feeling disrespected and the other one is feeling not heard. Or one client is feeling afraid and the other client is feeling like, they have all the power. So all of those manifest themselves. What's really sad is when they manifest themselves through the children. I don't know if it would be responsible for me to necessarily opine on what the most common conflict trap is, because frankly, there are so many. I do feel comfortable, however, opining on what the most dangerous conflict trap is, and that is using the children in those conflict traps. The American Bar Association did a longitudinal study of children of divorce and children of intact marriages, and the number one factor that they found, it was like a 20-year study of kids, and they took children when they were young, and then they looked at them when they were in their mid-20s, and they assessed a number of criteria. How many of them had graduated from college or a trade school? How many of them had engaged with the criminal system? How many of them had chronic medical or mental illnesses? How many of them were employed? How many of them expressed peer satisfaction in their own relationships? The things you would look at someone in their early to mid-20s and say, that kid's going to be okay. And the number one factor that they found that was determinant as to whether children would be okay was actually not marital status. It was whether parents could effectively co-parent and not put children in the middle of conflict. So there are people that stay married, that enmesh their children in the conflict traps. You're just like your father, you're just like your mother. Don't tell your mom, don't tell your dad. They're such a jerk. Those children fear worse than parents who get divorced and effectively co-parent. No, your dad loves you. No, your mom loves you. Well, what are some good things about your dad? What are some good things about your mom, right? When parents work effectively to co-parent and build resilience in their children, that's the number one indicator as to whether people's children are going to be okay. So, very long answer to your question. I can't speak as to the most common conflict trap, but by far the most dangerous conflict trap is putting children in the middle of it.
Yeah, and I would say that qualifies as a really big mistake that people do. And it's not out of intent. I think a lot of times people are really in so much pain themselves that it's really hard not to talk to the children, not to put them in the middle. And honestly, it can be really something as innocent as saying, can you give this to your father when you see him after school? Like, it doesn't have to be your father, rides around on a broomstick or anything horrible like that. It can just, the kid is in the middle if asked to carry a message. And even if that message, and when I was getting divorced, I thought, what's the big deal? You're going to take this paper and hand it to him after school because he needs to sign it for the teacher. My kids were like, don't ask us to do that. And I'm really glad they said that, Terry, because I think that, it stopped me from doing it. So what do you think are some of the other common mistakes that people make when they first enter the divorce process?
I think that people become penny wise and dollar foolish. I think, like any situation, you're better off spending good money up front and then less money in the future. I think that, what's that adage, a stitch in time saves nine. You're better off paying good, sound counsel up front. Do you know, by the way, what's the average cost of a wedding these days? Do we know? I don't even know.
I have no idea, but it really depends whose wedding, but some of them are pretty pricey.
I don't know. What are people paying? $25, $50, $100, $200,000 a wedding? Then why would you balk at a $10 or $15 or $20,000 divorce retainer? If to untangle everything you've accumulated over your everyday life for years and decades and your children, spend it up front. Be clear with your counsel as to what you expect him or her to spend time and money on and what you don't. You have the right to do that. But spend the money up front getting prepared, getting ready to be as amicable as you can, be as thorough as you can, be as contemplative as you can. And then at the end, it's pretty easy. It's just sending in the papers and having a judge sign it. You might not even have to go yourself. But the mistake is, oh no, I'm going to try and do this on my own, or no, that's too expensive. I can't tell you, Katherine, and you can probably, how many times this has happened to you, Katherine? People come and say, I should have hired you to begin with. How many times does that happen to you?
So often.
And then when they come to you and hire you after they didn't the first time, how much more does it cost them because you're trying to catch up?
I mean, a lot. And the money, and basically, then they're in a hole, right? If they'd come in like right from the beginning, and we would have started from the beginning on working on creating the right atmosphere for an amicable resolution that is really works for the parties and for the kids, like that is one thing. But when you're kind of gone backwards, it's worse than when you first, and now we have to kind of get you back to ground zero before we can start to build again. That's really a problem, I think.
And not only is it more expensive economically, emotionally, time. That's a common mistake is that people spend more time planning their wedding than they do divorce. And that's just crazy to me.
So, sometimes when that's happened, people really become entrenched in what we might think of as unreasonable positions that are punishing, or positions that are, from a legal perspective, never going to happen. And even from an emotional position, never going to happen because the other person just could not agree to do it. It's just not possible. It's too punitive, or something like that. So what it is in your experience that helps people back away from those rigid, sometimes unreasonable positions to reach a place where solutions become possible?
I have 3 responses, 3 strategies, and it depends upon the client. One client, we just lay in the weeds and do nothing. And I'm like, listen, no one's making any changes right now. The court isn't going to see you anytime soon. So we just lay in the weeds and do nothing because, as we talked about before, sometimes there's a maturation of emotion. And sometimes people sitting around in the sauce get them to change their opinion. The second thing I'll do is sometimes call their bluff and say, all right, we're going to trial. That's it. No one's changing their mind. Let's go to trial. I need a $50,000 trial retainer. Oh, I don't want to pay that. Well, these are your choices. It's okay. I'm not making you do anything. We're at a point right now where it's either somebody has to cave, and it doesn't have to be you. I don't, right? Either somebody has to cave or we're going to trial. So since neither one of you are caving, here's my bill for my trial retainer, $50,000. Sometimes that works. And the third thing I'll do is try and come up with a creative solution. We had a case where people were fighting over jewelry, and it was a lot of jewelry. It was like several $100,000 worth of jewelry. And they were fighting over this, and they were like wrangling, and we were going to go to trial over this jury, and we had like experts and everything else. And I stepped back, and I came up with a creative solution. I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to promise wife keeps all this jewelry with the promise that all of it must be passed down to the party's children. She can never sell it. She can never leverage it. And we actually put in the marital settlement agreement, this piece will go to this child. This piece will go to this child. Because the other spouse was like, I don't want her keeping it. I don't want her keeping it. Now the other spouse can say, all right, ultimately my kids are going to get it. I'm all right. So we do one of 3 things when people are intractable. 1, we sometimes sit around and let them marinate. 2, sometimes we call their bluff. And 3, sometimes we try to come up with a creative solution that lets them save face for them to escape themselves.
I think that a lot of people come into the divorce thinking that they have to win or win on a particular issue. And I mean, I personally think that the win-lose paradigm is a false paradigm in regard to divorce conflict. But from your perspective, what do you think winning in divorce actually looks like? Or what do the people think that looks like?
Well, it's interesting because as the managing partner here, we have clients all over the world. We've got 25 attorneys. We represent homeless people and billionaires. And you can imagine, as part of my duty as the managing partner, to keep all of the matrimonial department sane. And matrimonial attorneys have less than a 50% satisfaction rating by their clients. What? Why would you say that? Because half of the time our clients come to us, they don't want to be in the divorce. They already are unhappy with the process, right? And then even the ones who do want the divorce, they're never going to get everything they want. So literally, a good matrimonial attorney will have less than a 50% client satisfaction rate just based on where they are. Try telling that to baby lawyers. Oh, the majority of your clients aren't going to be happy. So we came up with something here that defines a lawyer winning, not the client, But I think by doing this, we've actually started increasing the percentage of clients who felt like they have won. We ask ourselves 3 questions and 3 questions only to know if the lawyer won the case. First, have we met the client where he or she is, right? If they're having a good day, are we having a good day? If they're having a bad day, have we met the client where he or she is? Number 2, have we zealously and thoroughly done everything we could to protect that client's best interest? Number 3, have we treated everybody along the way ethically? And if we've done those 3 things, meet the client where he or she is, work zealously and thoroughly, and treat everybody ethically, you could be damn sure we're winning every case. And I think by reframing a lawyer's job and our job description, we're actually getting more clients to feel like they win. Because it's not winning in the traditional sense. Nobody wins a divorce in the traditional sense. You win a divorce if you come out with dignity, most of your assets intact, and your kids being okay. That's winning a divorce.
So, Terry, what's one shift in thinking, a reframe, if you will, that can help someone approach divorce with more clarity and less fear?
A first reframe, I think, is to acknowledge the fear, because there's all kinds of fears. There's financial fear, there's emotional fear, there's security fear, there's housing fear. So the first thing I would tell clients is, first, let's figure out what kind of fear it is, then work to reframe it. Okay, if I'm feeling financial fear, how can we reframe this? Let's meet with your financial advisor. Let's get some solutions. If I'm feeling afraid because of housing, okay, let's talk about what the real options are with your housing. Can you keep the house? Can you buy someone out? Can we delay the sale of the house? So we try to reframe based on what the underlying emotion is. The second reframe we try to convey to all of our clients is, this divorce is an important part of your life. It is not your entire life. It's not your entire life. Go to the movies, get a massage, have a bottle of wine with your friends, go play golf, scream, throw darts, do something. But another important reframe is, divorce is an important part of your life. It's not your whole life.
All right. Well, last question in our last couple of minutes. Looking back on the many divorces that you've worked on over the years, what has surprised you the most about how people move through the divorce process?
I think what has surprised me so much is the difference in how each human handles it. Some are incredibly rapid with getting to the emotional readiness. Some it takes much longer, and some never get there. And what's most surprising to me is every day I learn something. You understand this, Katherine. When we are getting people divorced, we're not just dealing with all levels of intellect and emotionality. We're dealing with all kinds of businesses. Every day I learn something new, right? If I'm divorcing someone that owns a funeral home, it's a lot different than I'm divorcing like a 3rd grade teacher. And I think that's been surprising to me, just the tapestry of humanity. It's made me grow. It's made me more contemplative. And frankly, it's made me grateful. I learn more from my clients than I teach them. I can easily teach them about the law. I'm pretty good at that. But when it comes to like peopling, I learn more from my clients than they do from me.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Terry Lyons, thank you so much for being my guest on Divorce Dialogue. Your contact information and website will be in the show notes, but for people listening, do you want to just share where they can reach you?
Sure, they can find us anywhere on social media. You can also, our website is Lyons, Lyons, pc.com. And we're around if you want to find us. But my wish is that people never need to find us. Again, Katherine, my wish for you and your clients is tremendous happiness, health, and divorce with dignity for your clients. I mean that, genuinely.
Well, I wish the same for you and yours. Thank you so much. If this conversation was helpful, share it with someone who might need it. And if you're navigating divorce yourself, you'll find more resources and episodes at miller-law.com. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.